Amendment is common sense, straightforward, very simple. So I hope my colleagues will support this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, analyzing rules, that's part of their job. That's part of the EPA's job. It's part of the DOE's job. DOE has a budget in excess of $26 billion. In fact, we just found out just a couple of days ago that one program at the Department of Energy is costing $1.2 million per job created. They've got the resources to do it within existing funds. This isn't going to cost any new money, but what it's going to do is make sure that we're protecting the American consumers before cost increases occur. And with that, I urge a no vote on the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. All time having expired, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from California. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I would ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on this amendment offered by the gentlelady from California will be postponed. It's now in order to consider Amendment Number 24, printed in House Report 112-540. For what purpose does the gentlewoman rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 24, printed in House Report number 112-540, offered by Ms. Hanabusa of Hawaii.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Ms. Hanabusa, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Hawaii.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this amendment adds to Title III the quadrennial strategic federal onshore energy production strategy by providing another subsection, G, which basically mirrors the language found in the prior section, which addresses the Indian tribe lands. And this particular amendment includes in that the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act lands. As you are probably well aware, Hawaii is a unique situation in that in 1920 this Congress created the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, and that there is a special body of lands, 203,000 acres approximately, which are under control of this Congress. Congress approves whether or not things can be amended in the Act. Even upon statehood, that right was retained. As such, we would like to have included, and this is what this amendment seeks, to have all of the alternative and renewable energy sources, including geothermal, solar, wind, and other renewable energy sources on lands defined as available lands under the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, to be included in the strategic review. We believe this is not expanding this. It has no implications other than the fact that there is a body of lands which somehow have been forgotten that falls under federal jurisdiction. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. For what purpose the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to claim time in opposition to the amendment, although I am not opposed.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, we are prepared to accept this amendment. Native Hawaiian homelands are not managed as tribal lands by the federal government, which is why they were not included in the underlying legislation. However, Hawaiian homelands can provide another great source for domestic energy development. Therefore, we are prepared to accept this amendment. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
All time having expired, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Hawaii. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. It's now in order to consider Amendment Number 25, printed in House Report 112-540. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 25, printed in House Report number 112-540, offered by Ms. Speier of California.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Speier, and a member opposed. Each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I rise to introduce an amendment to the Strategic Energy Production Act. This bill is being pitched as an all-of-the-above energy bill, when in reality it is an oil-above-all bill full of giveaways to big energy companies. Mr. Chair, Title IV of H.R. 4480 would impose arbitrary deadlines on the Interior Department's review of applications for permits to drill for oil and gas onshore. After 60 days, if the Interior Department has not completed its review of an application to drill, the permit would be deemed approved, regardless of whether the department ensured that the drilling was safe. My amendment is quite simple. It would just strike this unwise and unwarranted provision. First, a little context would be helpful. The United States is in the middle of a great drilling boom. In fact, the Obama administration has issued more drilling permits in the last 3 years than the first 3 years of the Bush administration. A recent Citigroup report suggests the U.S. is already the world's fastest-growing oil and natural gas producer. Counting the output from Canada and Mexico, North America is the, quote, new Middle East, unquote. Meanwhile, the top 5 oil companies made $137 billion in profits last year. They are reaping the benefits of this revival, and they are doing just fine. Oil and gas companies are currently sitting on 6,700 approved, and I underscore approved, drilling permits that are not being used. Issuing more drilling permits more quickly is not the answer. What we should not be doing is tie the hands of Interior Department regulators by imposing an artificial and arbitrary shot clock in approving these drilling permits, especially when the risks of safety problems remain high. In fact, oil companies are already committing scores of serious safety violations when drilling on public lands, onshore. According to a recent Natural Resources Committee report, more than 2,000 safety and drilling violations were issued to 335 companies drilling in 17 states between 1998 and 2011. Overall, the analysis shows that only a very small percentage of these violations ever receive fines. In fact, of all of the fines issued, it generated $273,000 only out of the 2,000 violations. Here's an example. On dozens of occasions, oil and gas companies began drilling on federal lands without formal approval to do so. Many violations were issued because companies failed to keep proper records or conduct routine safety tests. But some significant ones include in 2009, an operator in Mississippi was found operating a well without any blowout preventer or any equivalent well control equipment. In 2010, an inspector at a New Mexico well found that one of the valves in the blowout preventer responsible for mitigating excessive pressure and flow was leaking. So we have many examples where the safety was not put first. Instead of preventing these sorts of safety violations, this bill puts profits first and safety and oversight last. I'm pleased that the majority has acknowledged the important role of the National Environmental Policy Act and the Endangered Species Acts play in the proper review of drilling permits, and has included language to prevent permits from being deemed approved in cases where review under those laws are still ongoing after 60 days. However, I think it's important for us to look at the unintended consequences. If this provision is enacted, it could actually lead to more applications for drilling permits to be rejected, because the Secretary may have no choice but to reject any application for a permit to drill that was nearing the 60-day time limit if the safety review was not complete. The bottom line here is that the United States oil and gas production is at an all-time high. Allowing for proper safety review of permits is a necessary safeguard for the American people, and this is a prudent step. Taxpayers deserve a process that ensures that any drilling on their public lands is held to common-sense safety standards. Let's not compromise the safety of drilling on public lands in a headstrong rush to give the oil and gas industry a free pass it demands. I respectfully urge all my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purpose the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise to claim time in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I do oppose this amendment. The legislation we're looking at today, H.R. 4480, aims to reduce bureaucracy and ensure much-needed certainty to allow energy production and job creation to move forward. It will give permit applicants assurance that their permits will be processed by the government in a timely fashion and ensure that needless bureaucratic delays are not hampering energy production as they are sometimes today. The Department of the Interior is plagued with delays in permitting energy projects on federal lands. These delays result in developers abandoning federal lands to develop energy only on private land. This hinders the creation of thousands of American jobs. This legislation simply requires that a decision on a drilling permit be made. It does not require an approval, but simply a decision. The government must answer yes or no. It's not acceptable for the government to stall, drag its feet, or even not respond. These are decisions that state agencies are making in days, while a BLM is taking months. This amendment, however, would delete this deadline for the government to provide an answer. Under this amendment, the federal government could literally take forever to respond. A deadline is absolutely necessary to give energy producers the confidence they need to seek out federal land for development rather than seeking to exclusively develop on private land. An identical amendment to the one offered by the gentlewoman from California failed during the Natural Resources Committee markup, and it failed on a bipartisan vote. So I would ask the same response here, that we vote this amendment down. I urge its opposition, and Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. She's yielded back.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. All time having expired, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from California. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Ask for a roll call vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from California will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 26, printed in House Report 112-540. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 26, printed in House Report number 112-540, offered by Ms. DeLauro of Connecticut.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Connecticut.
Thank you. This amendment would restore full funding per the President's request of $308 million to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. The additional $128 million in funds would be raised through the sale of new leases. The current funding level for CFTC sets the Commission up for failure. If the current funding level remains as is, Wall Street will be able to continue the risky manipulation of derivatives that brought on the last collapse. Big oil will continue to enjoy inflated profits every year due to erratic and artificially swollen oil prices. The losers will be the American people, who will pay more at the pump or even worse. At this funding level, the House majority sets up taxpayers to pay for yet another costly bailout of Wall Street. Republican and Democratic experts agree that the CFTC needs to be fully funded. Republican Gene Guilford, President and CEO of the Independent Connecticut Petroleum Association, served in the Commerce and Energy Departments under Ronald Reagan. He has said that the funding level for CFTC is, quote, horribly counterproductive. It would, quote, weaken its ability to enforce the oversight laws necessary to protect the American people. According to Brooksley Born, the former chair of the CFTC, the Commission is, quote, desperately in need of additional funding. The budget, she argues, would leave us all vulnerable to future financial crises. According to Gary Gensler, the current chairman of the CFTC, the agency is only 10% larger than it was in the 1990s, even as the futures market has grown to approximately $37 trillion notional. And through the Dodd-Frank reforms, Congress has added oversight of the $300 trillion swaps market, which is even more complex, and increased the number of trades under the jurisdiction by 334% in 2011. Gensler says, and I quote, "It is as if all of a sudden the National Football League expanded 8 times to play more than 100 games in a weekend with the same amount of referees." We know for a fact that the risky behavior in derivatives market is what precipitated the 2008 financial meltdown. It's still happening. We have seen it in MF Global, J.P. Morgan. We also know for a fact that excessive speculation in oil markets causes gas prices to oscillate wildly. Even the CEO of Exxon has said as much. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment to help to make sure that the CFTC has the resources to do the job, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. For what purpose? Gentleman from Colorado rise.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this bill is trying to deal with the rising prices of gas, of energy, by addressing a very important issue of supply and demand. And while I think there's nothing wrong with looking into the possibility of market manipulation, I do think this bill is trying to address another very important part of the price equation, and that is supply and demand. This issue has been studied, and it will continue to be studied. But I'll remind the gentlelady that we're dealing with an agency that has over $200 million already in its budget, and this amendment adding $128 million would be a significant increase in funding for FY 2012, the CFTC budget. And so I would urge a no vote on this amendment. And if you just look at what the CFTC's task force has said, going back in 2008, the task force's preliminary assessment is that current oil prices and the increase in oil prices between January 2003 and June 2008 are largely due to fundamental supply and demand factors. 2009, we find little evidence that hedge funds and other non-commercial speculator position changes cause price changes. The results instead suggest that price changes do precede their position changes. And so we can go on and on about what the CFTC has already said, but this bill deals with the issue of supply and demand, and I know there's another gentleman in the chamber who's done tremendous work on this issue over at the CFTC and commodity issues, and a great leader from the state of Texas, Mr. Conway, and I would yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from the state of Texas.
Well, thank the gentleman for yielding. I am the chairman of the subcommittee on agriculture on the General Farm Commodities and Risk Management that does have oversight of the CFTC, and I expected the arguments for this particular amendment to go a different direction. But it does occur to me that we are chastised, those of us on authorizing committees, Mr. Chairman, are chastised often for trying to appropriate in an authorizing bill. Well, this seems like, during the appropriations process, they're trying to write policy in the appropriations bills is not allowed. Well, this is appropriating in an authorizing bill, and it makes no sense whatsoever. The subcommittee on agriculture on the appropriations committee goes through these spending requests in detail over and over through weeks of committee work, and then they will come to their conclusion. They've in fact come to their conclusion, and they'll bring this bill forward next week. It's a bit presumptuous to come in here to ask this body to spend another $128 million on an agency that the Appropriations Subcommittee on Agriculture has already spent plenty of time deciding how much that agency needs to spend over the coming years. So I would urge a no vote on this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Connecticut.
If I might just take a second to remind the gentleman from Texas that, in fact, this amendment was made in order, and in the body of the language it just talks about it being subject to appropriations. Can I ask how much time we have left?
You have 2 1/4 minutes.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady. Back 10 years ago, about a third of all of the interest in this oil futures marketplace was controlled by speculators, but 2/3 was controlled by the airline industry, the trucking industry, industries that are dependent upon oil. Today, it's just the flip. Today, 2/3 of that oil futures marketplace is controlled by speculators, and only 1/3 is controlled by airline industry, trucking industry, and others dependent upon the price of oil. So what happens? What happens is, all of a sudden, you have this crazy volatility, where experts say that upwards of 20% of the price of a barrel of oil in the futures marketplace is related to speculation. It's not related to anything in the real marketplace. And so what happens? Well, that has a dramatically negative impact on truckers, on airline industries, because there are games being played out there. And by the way, with the speculators, they make money on the way up and they make money on the way down. That's not true for ordinary companies because they're not in there playing a game. They are not speculators. They're not doing this as part of some kind of casino that speculators thrive in. And here's the rule. On the way up, the big guy cleans up. On the way down, the little guy gets cleaned out. And that's what we're seeing over and over and over again. So the President has asked to increase the number of cops on the beat, the CFTC cops on the beat that can patrol to make sure that the games that are being played don't hurt the little guy. And what are the Republicans saying? They're saying they want to cut the President's request for more cops on the beat sixfold. And what happens then? Well, we're going to be deep sixing the hopes, the dreams, the aspirations of ordinary companies who are still going to see these games being played. So the DeLauro Amendment makes it possible to put the CFTC cop back on the beat.
Fired. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, we have to understand the best thing that this Congress can do to drive down the price of gasoline is increasing our supply opportunities right here. To drive down the cost of energy production is to drive down the cost of energy, increase our production right here. And I urge a no vote on this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut has 15 seconds.
I thank the gentleman. I mean, just see is that we are not here representatives of Wall Street, but we are representatives of the American people. We need the CFTC to oversee the risky behaviors, to enforce the law. We are here to represent the American taxpayer, not Wall Street or big banks. The current funding that's being pursued by the majority is reckless. I urge my colleagues to put Main Street over Wall Street and support the amendment.
Gentleman from Colorado.
Mr. Chairman, I urge a no vote. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Connecticut. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
On that, I request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Connecticut will be postponed. In order to consider amendment number 27, printed in the House Report 112-540. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 27.
Does the gentlelady rise as a designee for the gentlelady from Texas?
I do rise as the designee for the gentlelady from Texas, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 27, printed in House Report number 112-540, offered by Ms. Bass of California.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Bass, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today as the designee to present Representative Sheila Jackson Lee's Amendment number 27 to H.R. 4480, which would establish an Office of Energy Employment and Training, as well as an Office of Minority and Women Inclusion that would be responsible for all matters relating to diversity in management, employment, and business activity. This amendment simply recognizes the importance of developing a diverse and highly skilled technical workforce within the Department of Interior. The Department of Interior reviews permits, examines lease sales, and ensures that each application meets the highest safety standards. We should be focused on providing the Department of Interior with trained technical engineers and other such necessary personnel to review drilling permit applications both carefully and thoroughly. Given the aftermath of the BP oil spill, it is easy to understand the importance of addressing all safety concerns prior to the issuance of oil and gas leases. Since the disaster, federal safety regulations have been tightened, spill containment response capability has been enhanced, and lessons have been learned. These lessons must be understood by everyone involved in reviewing and approving each and every application for permits and lease sales. Responsible onshore drilling includes having our best minds working to carefully and diligently review each application. This amendment is intended to include both women and minorities in the process. This amendment is designed to ensure that DOI is able to recruit, retain, and train skilled professionals, many of whom require a science, technology, engineering, or math backgrounds. The DOI will be encouraged to reach out to high school students, college students, and professionals. It establishes an Office of Energy Employment and Training, which will oversee the efforts of the Department of Interior's energy planning, permitting, and regulatory activities related to this act. This office will be responsible for issuing quarterly reports to the Secretary, which will include the amount of jobs created by the DOI, as well as reporting the types of job training programs that have been implemented or proposed. This amendment also addresses the need to encourage diversity within the DOI. By creating the Office of Minority and Women Inclusion, which is specifically designed to encourage diversity by reaching out to both women and minorities. Specifically, the DOI will have a director appointed by the Secretary of the Interior who will develop clear standards for equal employment opportunities and will address the need for increased racial, ethnic, and gender diversity at both the junior and senior management levels of the department. This amendment would require the DOI to take affirmative steps to seek diversity in the workforce of the department at all levels. The Department of the Interior would be required to sponsor job fairs in urban communities and partner with organizations that are focused on developing opportunities for both minorities and women in the energy industry. Again, it is the job of the DOI to ensure that all lease sales meet the highest reasonable standards for safety. This amendment is meant to ensure that women and minorities have a fair opportunity to participate in making these types of decisions to the Interior Department. I support my colleague Jackson Lee's amendment and urge my colleagues to do the same.
Gentlelady reserve, or?
Yes, I reserve my time.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Colorado.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to claim time in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise to oppose this amendment reluctantly. I understand the gentlewoman's intentions of this amendment, and portions of this idea have strong merit. Let there be no doubt that the Department of Interior can do a better job of both hiring and contracting in these areas. But this debate today isn't the most appropriate place for us to consider these particular reforms. Every provision in this legislation has been carefully vetted through the legislative process. The House Natural Resources and Energy and Commerce Committees have both held oversight and legislative hearings and committee markups on the underlying legislation. This subject, while it is something definitely worth considering, has not had this level of review under the legislative process and would insert a major programmatic and bureaucratic change in a simple bill that is geared toward expanding American energy production and jobs. Also, as currently drafted, the proposal is over 12 pages long and would add significant new federal bureaucracy. If the gentlewoman is willing to withdraw her amendment, I will commit the Natural Resources Committee to seeking to work with her to address this subject. And if she will not withdraw, then I must reluctantly oppose this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from California.
Yes, thank you for your offer, but given that I am the designee for Representative Jackson Lee, I don't feel it's appropriate for me to withdraw the amendment, and I would simply close by saying that the purpose of the amendment is to recognize the importance of developing a diverse and highly skilled technical workforce within the DOI, and all studies have indicated that there is a serious lack of diversity. With that, I yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would now yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, Representative Gardner from Colorado.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank my colleague from Colorado for giving me the time on this amendment. And I want to tell a little story. A year ago, I had the opportunity to visit a hydraulic fracturing site in my district, a county called Weld County in northern Colorado. And when you're dealing with hydraulic fracturing, what happens about 2 or 3 in the morning, the crews that are overseeing the hydraulic fracturing, at least in this particular area, get up, they go to their trucks, that actually have this panoramic view of the well site so they can monitor everything that's taking place. They can monitor all the equipment. They have the computers inside the truck that explains and expands upon what's happening in the operation at that point. It's filled with engineers. And on this particular tour site that I went to, the hydraulic fracturing, the production engineer was a woman. And I'm pretty sure that I would have been rejected by her college for the engineering program before I even applied. So it was an incredible opportunity to learn from her the work that she was doing. There were many other women members of that particular crew. And so I think the best way that we can get more women, more minorities hired, working in this country, whether it's energy or not, is to create more opportunity. More opportunity means more jobs. More jobs means more hiring. And when you have more hiring, we're going to put more people back to work. Men, women, minorities. That's the opportunity that this bill presents. It's an opportunity to create jobs, an opportunity to lower the price of gas so that men, women, and minorities are able to afford the price of a gallon of gasoline to get to their job. And I would thank the gentleman again for yielding time, and I would yield back the remainder of my time to the gentleman who controls time.
Gentleman from Colorado.
I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady's yielded back.
We yield back.
All time having expired, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from California. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
I move that the committee now rise.
The question is on the motion that the committee rise. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises.
The House will be in order. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 4480, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
The Committee on the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 4480, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the House will stand in recess, subject to the call of the Chair.